I want to put a video out here, an update on the cattle market. We've had some questions coming in here on really on livestock on a whole, not just on cattle and hogs, but a little bit more this week because of the tariff talk that has originated out of Washington and what that might mean for our beef trade. We trade a lot of beef and pork with Canada and of course Mexico and obviously China. Let's look at what this means. And first of all, let's start out with some Chinese news on their pork. Uh, Chinese pork demand down anywhere from 60% to 70% from last year. Chinese pork imports down 35%. Two things. Number one, the country rebuilt from African swine fever, and they maybe bought a little too much, overbought ahead of that or during that outbreak. And so now they have this abundance of pork at the same time that the Chinese diet has really shifted to beef. Beef imports are up into China. I do think that the hog market will settle down. It'll work its way out. We will probably see a bit of a reduction in our export demand going into China, but we look at the red meat futures, and it really didn't weigh on the market here this week at all. And that's mainly because that cold storage report that came out on Monday afternoon showed us that the U.S. pork reserves are at a 20-year low right now. So we really can't afford to export too much more pork than we are. No, it's a sizable, inventory, but it's not one that we really want to cut in too much further. And that's why the news of China backing away from their imports didn't really affect us. And it's also the reason the funds are near record long in the hog complex and willing to hang on to that position. Switch over to the cattle. Kind of the same scenario building there. Our export demand is picking up on beef, never really quieted down that much. Our domestic demand remains strong, hasn't backed off at all this year. Consumers going into the holiday season continue to buy beef as the main dish to be served, so to speak, rather than turkey. So that's a good sign. And the thing is, same as with the hogs, the U.S. beef supply right now, cold storage report indicated 10-year low in beef reserves. The cattle on feed report did negate that a little bit. Cattle inventory 12 million head right now is crowding in on some 25-year highs that we have in the lots. But again, consumer demand is holding in there. Same as corn and soybeans and wheat. It's not just a production story, it's a demand story, and the demand is high for beef and pork right now. I don't expect the tariffs to really be a huge factor for us. I don't think it's going to be on our exported animals. We'll have to look and see how many feeder cattle we get out of Canada after this. We've been getting a lot of feeder cattle and a lot of feeder hogs out of Canada. So that might be where the tariffs would probably hurt us in the livestock the most. The other big news story this week was the discovery of screwworm in cattle in Mexico. This is a really highly contagious parasite. Gets into open wounds. It can cause some damage and a lot of loss, and it's easily transmitted to humans. We've had it eradicated in the United States since 1960, and we really don't want this coming back in. Like I said, we've shut down Mexican cattle imports, and the question was, well, how much cattle do we get out of Mexico? About 100,000 head a month cross the border into the U.S. So take that. That's about how much we'll see lost. I mean, we can absorb that. It's not a huge loss, but it's one that we don't want to continue to see happen very long. Let's put it that way. So all things considered, the question is, do I think livestock futures, what's my outlook on them? On hogs, I think we're going to sit pretty good for now. The demand side and the low inventory right now is more of a bullish factor than the loss of Chinese demand is bearish. If funds start to liquidate, totally different story. And funds can do that at the drop of a hat. We know that. Kind of the same thing in the livestock. Cattle futures holding pretty good. We got, cattle holding up there. We're at the top end of a cattle range, though. I mean, when we start getting up in this, 185 to $190 a hundred, that's when we start to see pressure set in. I don't expect huge declines, but I would say we're in the upper end of our price ranges on live cattle right now. Again, barring a black swan event. Anyway, those are some of the factors in cattle and hogs. I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed a little bit here before the Thanksgiving holiday. Everybody, have a good break.